we will turn our attention here in the States to a federal judge who ruled that the Trump administration cannot force pharmaceutical companies to disclose the list price of their drugs in television ads. Now, this ruling acts as a major blow to the president's effort to pressure drug companies to lower their prices. Joining us now is Tom Kottler, HealthPrize Technology CEO. And there are a lot of people who think that putting the price in the ads wouldn't really have made much of a difference anyway. Why not?
Well, the price people pay for their drugs is not the list price anyways. Actually, putting out what they charge as a quote-unquote list price is actually more confusing than not. If you have a copay card for most of these drugs, you actually pay nothing, or maybe $20 a month. So it's an incredibly confusing thing. And frankly, there are only two countries in the world that allow television ads to consumers or patients, the United States and New Zealand. So what we ought to be thinking about is getting rid of them altogether. And frankly, there aren't that many drugs, branded drugs, that actually do ads on television. You see the same ads of the same drugs sort of over and over again, but it really doesn't tell anyone anything of any real value. It's largely symbolic, and the only people who actually pay the list price, interestingly enough, are uninsured patients, of which there will be more, in point of fact, if the Trump administration gets its way on the Affordable Care Act. So it's not even a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. It's really nothing of any real merit or value.
So we've heard the president talk about some different ways to try to fix the drug pricing and just overall health cost system. We've heard the candidates. Rick is well familiar with a lot of their plans. What do you think would be the more effective way, or the most effective way, of getting drug prices and healthcare costs overall down?
Well, I mean, if we're focusing on drug prices, not healthcare costs generally.
So let's focus on that first.
You would see that drug prices are a lot less in countries that have nationalized healthcare. That's because the government negotiates the price on behalf of all the patients in that country. In this country, we have this broken, disaggregated system. If you took the 1,000 smartest people on the planet and stuck them in a room for 6 months and said, build the worst healthcare system you can build, that's what we have. And it comes down to bizarre pricing models for virtually everything in healthcare. So whether you politically believe or not in a single payer, if you want to get prices down, particularly with drug manufacturers, single payer systems actually work.
We don't have a single payer system, though, and it's almost politically impossible to get there. So one of the ideas is to allow Medicare to negotiate for drug prices, and that would just cover Medicare. Would that work, number one, and would that help for people who are not in Medicare, or could it actually have the opposite effect where drug prices actually go higher outside of Medicare?
I'm not an expert in that. I can't really give you an answer, but what I would tell you is this. The largest insurer in the United States is the federal government.
Yep.
If they decided to negotiate drug prices, they would bring those prices down. It's pretty simple. Whether they would bring them down for everybody is a really interesting question. So would you have people on Medicare paying a much lower price and people on insurance paying a different price? What's really interesting actually is if you're a Medicare or Medicaid patient or anyone who gets your pharmacy benefits paid for by the federal government, you cannot get a copay card from a pharmaceutical manufacturer. So I, as a privately insured patient, can take an expensive drug and get a copay card where often my copay is zero. That same benefit actually is not available to federal beneficiaries because of the federal kickback statute. So there are a lot of things you could fix to lower drug prices to the actual end user. The real problem, I got to say honestly, for the end user really isn't actually just the pricing. In Europe, where there are no copays, patients still don't take their medication. So the outcomes we're getting from the problem is really outcomes, right? What we're trying to do is have these medications get patients better outcomes. Interestingly enough, if you look at Europe, and the Netherlands is a great example, there are lots of researchers in this area, they have the same rates of non-adherence, patients not taking their medications, as we do in the United States. They have no copays. Really, pricing isn't the big deal for the vast majority of patients. It just happens to be this visceral thing you can complain about, and it's easy. It's not a fix to much of anything.
Well, and your business is aimed at getting people to take their medicines, right?
It is a huge problem, which costs an estimated $290 billion each year in the United States alone.
In wasted drugs, you're saying?
In otherwise avoidable medical spending.
How would you respond? Let's assume we get some kind of, whether it's Rick's proposal or a suggestion that might happen with Medicare and Medicaid negotiating. If that were to happen, the critics of this sometimes say, well, the pharmaceutical companies might stop making certain medications. How do you respond to that? I imagine part of what you'll say is that they're making enough money they can do it. But if they don't want to make it, they won't make it.
So they already don't make drugs. Look at Martin Shkreli. He bought a company that had a generic drug, by the way, not branded, no patent protection, but he was the only one that was making it. So he just decided to charge whoever he wanted to. Will that continue to happen? I think not, because I think there are plenty of opportunities for companies. Look, there are a bunch of hospital systems now that are starting a generic drug manufacturer that will start making drugs that other people aren't making. Their goal is to save patient lives and make their lives better, not make money. And so I think that gap will be filled. What we want pharmaceutical companies to do is not come to market with a whole bunch of Me Too drugs and continue charging prices for stuff that insulins, for example, prices go up every single year, a multiple of inflation. There's no reason for that, but we do want those companies to continue to bring to market CAR T therapies and gene therapies that are changing people's lives. So they do need to make enough money to do that, be profitable. On the other hand, there's got to be a fix to this, just constant raising of prices as sort of the drug to the drug companies.
Tom Kottler, HealthPrize Technology CEO, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.